Welcome to Mentality. Guys, my name is Elijah Phillips. I'm your host. I'm glad you're here, glad you found us. So let's be honest with one another. Let's talk real for a little bit. We don't really know who we are. And the crazy part is we don't even realize it. We know how to work. We know how to provide. We know how to handle pressure. That's why God gave us these strong backs, these big shoulders. And we know how to show up when it's needed. But when it comes to identity, when it comes to answering the question of who am I, that's where it gets confusing for us. That's where it gets a little blurry for us. And it's not because we're weak. It's not because we're incapable. It's because somewhere down the line, no one really showed up and slowed down long enough to walk us through that question. Instead, society and culture just hands us a list of expectations. Perform well, be strong, don't fold, provide, keep it together. And if you do all of those things well enough, well then maybe someday you'll feel like someone. But what most men start to realize, and it's usually later than we'd like, is that we can do all of those things and still feel off. We can succeed and still feel uncertain. We can be respected in our communities, in our churches, and we can still feel like we're playing a role. You can build a life that looks solid and structured on the outside and still feel like something underneath is unsettled and shaky. That's the tension that we're living in. We're showing up every day. We're doing everything that we're supposed to do. We're handling our responsibilities. But there's this question that's nagging at us in the background of our mind, and it never really goes away. Is this really me? Why does this still feel like it's not enough? Why do I feel like I'm constantly trying to prove something? And most guys, most of us, we don't even say that out loud. It's taboo. We're trying to keep that hush-hush. We just keep moving. We stay busy. We stay focused. We keep stacking our responsibilities because it's easier to keep going than it is to stop and actually deal with what's going on internally. But eventually, all of that stuff catches up to us. And that's why I created this channel. That's what Mentality is about. This isn't just another channel about motivation or discipline or getting our life together. Those things matter and those things are important, but they're not our starting point. Because if we try to build discipline without identity, we'll experience burnout. If we try to build confidence without identity, it turns into performance. If we try to step into purpose without identity, it just stockpiles pressure on our life. So instead of starting with what we need to do and behavior modification, we're starting with who we are. Because the truth is, most of us men have built our identity on three things: performance, provision, perception. What I do, what I produce, and what people think. And again, those things matter. You should work hard. You should take responsibility. You should care about how you show up. But the problem is when those things stop being something you do and they become who you are, become what you've based your identity off of. That's where the problem arises. Because the moment that happens, everything in our life is shaky and unstable. And if our identity is tied to our performance, then every failure hits a lot deeper than it should. It's no longer I messed up. It becomes I'm a mess up. If your identity is tied to your provision, then any moment we experience lack, we lose our job, things like that, it feels like a personal deficiency. And if our identity is tied to perception, then we end up living our entire life based off of how other people see us and how other people think about us. So now we're not just living, we're managing an image. We're carrying pressure the pressure of trying to keep everything together, not just because it matters, but because our identity is attached to it. And that, my friends, is exhausting. That is pressure that we weren't supposed to carry. That's why so many of us are tired, and not physically, but internally, because we're carrying something on our shoulders that we were never meant to. We're trying to build an identity on things that were never meant to hold that weight. So here's where we shift things. And this is where this channel is going. Identity doesn't start with us. It's not initiated in us. It's initiated with God. It starts with God. And I know a lot of you might think that that sounds like a church answer, but I want you to think about it really. If you're trying to figure out who you are without understanding where you came from, you're always going to be guessing. You're always going to be reacting to your environment, your experiences, your wins, your losses. But when you understand that your identity is rooted in something deeper, something that doesn't change when your circumstances do, then that creates stability in your life. That's why we talk about things like the incarnation, God stepping into humanity, not just as a theological idea, but as the starting point of our identity. Because when God steps into humanity, he's not just showing us who he is. He's showing us what we were always meant to be. We're going to talk about what it means to be a son, not in a surface level way, but in a way that actually breaks the mindset of, I have to earn this. Because a lot of men, even in faith, even though we're going to church every Sunday and every Wednesday, we're still operating like we have something to prove, like we have to get everything right before we feel accepted, before we feel like we belong. And we're going to break that. We're going to stop that cycle right here. That's what this channel's for. We're going to talk about how your thinking shapes your life, because whether you realize it or not, there's a narrative running in your head. You've got a story that you're living off of, and there's a voice that's been shaped by your past, your experiences, your environment. And if that voice is off, your life is going to follow it. So we're going to deal with that. We're going to talk about discipline, and not from a place of pressure, but from a place of alignment. There's a difference between forcing yourself to do something and living in a way that actually matches who you are. One is going to burn you out, and the other is going to build you up. And that's what the gospel is all about. It's about building you up. It's about encouraging you. And we're going to talk about leadership, and not just leading others, but leading ourselves. Because if we can't lead our own thoughts, our own habits, our own decisions, then it doesn't matter how much influence we have. None of that's going to last for us. And we're going to talk about purpose, but not in a way that makes you feel like you have to go out and find it somewhere. Purpose isn't something that you're chasing. It's something that flows out of identity. It flows out of who you are. When you know who you are and what you're called to do, all of that will become clearer for you. So this channel is for men who are tired of pretending, tired of carrying pressure they don't even fully understand, tired of feeling like they're constantly trying to measure up. It's for men who are ready to slow down long enough to actually deal with what's underneath all of that, to get honest, to grow, to become grounded. Because when a man knows who he is, everything in his life lines up with that. That we experience change and transformation in every area of our life. We don't fold under pressure easily. We don't chase validation the same way. We don't feel the need to prove ourselves in every room. We move differently, we think differently, and we lead differently. Not because we're trying to be someone, but because we finally understand who we are. And that's where we're going. So if you've been feeling that tension, if you've been asking those questions, if something in you knows there's more, but you haven't been able to put your finger on it, then this channel's for you. You're in the right place. This is MEN-tality, and I'm glad you're here.